Hello, I'm Patrick and welcome to another Arma 3 Flight Quick Tips. This video will be covering the topic of speeding up landings and landing in tight spaces. Landing in tight spaces first requires a good understanding of landing properly and open areas first so you can get used to which speeds are more flexible than others. So before I can fully explain landing in tight spaces, I need to cover landings in general. Also, I have a handbook that I made for the 161st V-SOAR that is available to the public covering the basics of landing in much more detail than this video. The way I try to teach landings, and has had huge success with other Arma pilots, is taken from me studying Black Hawk helicopter's flight while approaching an area, and then adding or removing a few things to factor in the way Arma handles flight. I try to teach a 1 kilometer approach that's broken up into 3 stages: cruising, approach, and final bleed. When first starting out, you're going to want to take a 1 kilometer approach slow and then try to speed it up. The reason I want you to start slow is because people usually develop bad habits when practicing landings, and it's good to stop this before it starts. Most people assume that a faster landing means that you increase your travel speed, but it's more optimal to adjust where you change the stages rather than increasing the speed of said stages. This helps you get familiar with each of the stages and builds muscle memory. Once you get a good understanding of each stage by taking it slow first, you should then start adjusting where you change your stages for a more optimal approach speed. If you look at the graph, you'll see that the top approach has the exact same speeds as the bottom approach, yet the bottom approach is much faster. This is the best way to increase your landing speeds rather than flying in unstably high speeds. Alright, now I'm going to show you here shortly 2 clips side by side with a colored box on the bottom of each clip showing you which stage I'm in. Clip 1 is going to be the slower top approach line. Clip 2 is going to be the faster bottom approach line. Let's see who finishes first. Alright, now let's go ahead and merge that with the tight landing part of the video. The point of going over the basics first is just to help make sure this is as uncomplicated as possible. Let's go over first of what I like to call flexible speed. Flexible speed is about 100 kilometers an hour or less. In this speed, you have maximum control over the helicopter's movement. Inside this speed is where you're going to see most building weaving and tree weaving being done. And if you've been paying attention to the clip above, you'll have seen that I'm almost always within the flexible speed. And alright, with that in mind, I'm going to show you a similar clip to the Stratus runway one I showed you before, but instead of the white stage indicator at the bottom meaning landing, it's going to be transition into stable speed. Alright, now what this does is allows us to have a similar approach to any other landing, yet gives us a flexible speed to have the precision needed to land in said area. Similar to what I said earlier with an approach, a common idea is that experienced pilots do tight landings at high speed. It's more that we do them with fluidity and having to do minimal correction. If you were to check a pilot doing a tight landing speed indicator, you would see that he's well within the flexible speed. If you want a faster tight landing, I suggest trying to minimize the amount of correction needed before setting down. Now onto the last thing to account for, is knowing your rotor clearance and having a good idea on where your airframe is in relation to you. If you don't like flying in third person, it is a really strong suggestion to have a good mental image on where your airframe and rotor is in relation to you. A good example is that when I'm in the AH9, MH9, AH6, MH6, whatever you want to call it, I think of two more airframes without the rotors on either side of me. It gives me a rough example of how much rotor clearance I have when going into a tighter area. Now feel free to watch these next 2 clips and watch for my thought process. I'm Patrick, and thank you for making it through this Arma 3 flight quick tips. Hope to see you in the next one.